What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Islam Makhachev roasts UFC fighters. Islam Makhachev hasn't held back over the years while questioning the jiu-jitsu and grappling skills of various fighters. Well, more recently, the UFC's lightweight champ was asked to weigh in on whether he thinks certain fighters truly deserve to hold a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. If you followed Makhachev over the years or his buddy and longtime teammate Khabib Nurmagomedov, you know that they believe the wrestling and grappling they learned in Dagestan rule the galaxy. During a recent interview with Hoshe MMA, Makhachev was asked if Tom Aspinall, Aljamain Sterling, Dustin Poirier, Paddy Pimblett, and Tony Ferguson are really black belt level when it comes to BJJ. Check out this response.
Tom Aspinall.
He have.
Keep. Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah, he have.
Oh. Dustin Poirier.
Maybe brown.
Paddy Pimblett.
I don't know, maybe brown or purple.
Tony Ferguson.
Ferguson, no, he don't have black belt. Real, it's not black belt. He's good. He have couple things in the ground, what he did like with the many fighters, but he's a not real black belt. I working with the black belt, you know. He's real black belt. He's so tough, you know. But for the fighters, they just not give gift, you know.
They just buy them from eBay.
Yeah, maybe like this, but it's a not deserve. Some of not deserve. They just some of the coach they gift.
Not surprisingly, Makhachev's comments drew a lot of interesting responses online. Here were some. Islam ain't lying that a lot of fighters don't deserve to have a black belt. Like a lot, because Islam is right. There really are levels, and at most, some are brown or purple. Ortega comes to mind, and that's an MFN black belt. Come on, do we need more Tony Ferguson slander? The guy's old now, but that doesn't change who he once was. Islam needs his own show, man. He's too funny. They really should have done DC and Islam instead of DC and Chael. One thing I'll stand on is Paddy Pimblett's jiu-jitsu is some of the best in UFC. Been doing it for 14 years as his main source of offense. It's literally the only thing that has him at this level. Puzzles me why even now his ground game isn't taken seriously. Makhachev's take about Ferguson's jiu-jitsu game, in particular, was really interesting, as at one time, El Cucuy was widely considered to be one of the more dangerous submission stylists in the game. So much so, for years, there were endless debates about how Khabib would do if he took Ferguson down. But on account of the former interim champ's 8-fight losing skid, which has seen Ferguson submitted 3 times, the narrative around that has clearly shifted. Now let's take a look at Alexander Volkanovski predicts Israel Adesanya fight. As UFC 305 approaches, there's been plenty of talk about whether Israel Adesanya is truly still locked into fighting. And sure, part of that is because of the verbal warfare Dricus Du Plessis has engaged in. But not only is Alexander Volkanovski predicting that the last stylebender will reclaim middleweight gold at the event, he believes Izzy will do so in jaw-dropping fashion. Although Adesanya isn't that far removed from his knockout win over Alex Pereira, which electrified MMA for days, some have questioned if the Adesanya era is over. A key reason being that after Adesanya's shocking loss to Sean Strickland, he announced he was stepping away from fighting for a while. Well, fast forward to today, and Adesanya will throw hands with his rival Du Plessis next Saturday. Ahead of the bout, Volkanovski outlined via his YouTube channel why he thinks his pal will be victorious at UFC 305.
I'm expecting a performance from Israel Adesanya, like a proper performance, like you know how you've seen the Paulo Costa's performance, a fight like that where he goes out and just does it in impressive fashion. Because Dricus is very awkward, very unorthodox, he's got an awkward pressure, and we've seen obviously an awkward pressure from Strickland give Izzy problems, but that doesn't happen to Izzy twice. There's no way that fight looks the same. Izzy's going to have a completely different adjustment and he's going to capitalize. The awkward, unpredictable sort of style that Dricus is going to give. I don't feel like Izzy's going to be surprised. I think Izzy might have been a little bit surprised with the pressure and the defensive pressure from Strickland, but I don't think there's any surprises this time. I think he's expecting, you know, an awkward fighter to be coming, putting the pressure on him, and I think he's going to be ready to capitalize on that.
It's going to be fascinating to see how this fight plays out, no question. It's certainly worth noting that before Izzy bombed out Pereira, there was also talk that his days at the top had come to an end after Poatan ended his reign at UFC 281. All that aside, it looks like DDP's coach, Morten Visser, has been using pretty interesting / odd training methods for this camp. Okay, up next, Merab Dvalishvili sends a warning to Tim Welch. Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley have been exchanging verbal shots for a little while now, but as their September 14th scrap approaches, a growing feud between Merab and Sugar's coach is kind of overshadowing their fight. Even before Dvalishvili was booked to fight O'Malley at UFC 306, it was clear he and Sugar had beef. After all, Dvalishvili is close friends with Aljamain Sterling, who's also feuded with O'Malley extensively before he lost the title to the Rising Star. Part of that feud was fueled by O'Malley's coach, ex-fighter Tim Welch, who's very active online and isn't shy about criticizing Sean's opposition. So while Merab was recently talking with MMA Fighting's Damon Martin, he explained why he has some serious issues with Welch.
Even now, like, he's talking his podcast, like, make fun of my height, make fun of my nose. Even now, he's bringing some, like, he says some fans and some stupid things. Like, he's talking about, like something stupid. It's nothing is real. Like, he's putting their stuff that, like, he's making some stories about me, which is not true. And then he deserves to smack his face. And that's what I tell Sean O'Malley. Hey, Sean, tell your coach to shut your mouth, because I was so pissed when I see all these videos, how he does stupid things, how he talks stupid. I said, tell him to shut his mouth off. And he said, oh, you should fight him. You should fight him. Bro, I'm talking about street fight. I mean, you think I'm gonna go cage and I'm gonna have a referee and I'm gonna have a rules there? I'm talking about when I will see him, I'm gonna smack his face.
Merab also argued in the interview that coaches should stick to coaching and not get involved with pre-fight smack talk. He argued you wouldn't see similar actions in other sports. But what do you think? Does Merab have a point? Is Welch crossing the line? And do you think any of this shows O'Malley and Welch are in Merab's head, and that maybe he's losing focus? Next, let's take a look at Paddy Pimblett body transformation after UFC fight. Due to what transpired before and at UFC 304, it seemed like the MMA world would be done speculating on how much weight Paddy Pimblett was going to gain in between his next fights, but based on a new video clip that recently went out, it's clear that won't be the case. Pimblett has garnered plenty of attention in the past on account of the pounds he's packed on when he's not in training camp. Of course, it should be noted that when it comes to fight week, weight has not appeared to be an issue for Paddy. After all, we're talking about a guy with a 22-3 record. During Paddy's UFC 304 camp, it was reported he came into camp already in really good shape, and as the fight neared, it was clear Pimblett was indeed ridiculously shredded. But more recently, Pimblett revealed that he's already 198 pounds, just a few weeks out from UFC 304. After challenging his critics to insult him to his face, Paddy had this interesting response to recent comments from the lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev.
Did you see that where Islam was talking about me the other day? He said it's an exciting fighter and that, keeps winning, you never know, he could fight for the belt and that. You know Islam, we're coming brother, we're coming.
So what do you think of the fact Paddy is nearing the 200-pound mark? Is there a reason for concern? Or is this just more of the same from Paddy? And do you see him challenging for the UFC's lightweight throne at some juncture? George St-Pierre talks about UFC testing. Back in the day, George St-Pierre was one of the more influential voices in the campaign for the UFC to expand drug testing in MMA. And following the UFC split with USADA last year, the legends outlined again why it's important to have third-party organizations running drug testing. If you're a longtime fan of MMA, you know that GSP was one of the first big stars to publicly express concerns about performance-enhancing drugs in the sport. The UFC had relied on athletic commission testing, but critics questioned how effective that testing was given that fighters could cycle on and off PEDs, depending on when they fought. Well, all that changed with the USADA program. So much so, the organization was eventually accused of having invasive and overboard testing. Then, late last year, it was announced the UFC was ending its partnership with USADA and would be working with Drug Free Sport International moving forward. So, when GSP recently appeared on Theo Von's podcast, the issue of PEDs came up. The Canadian star credited the UFC for implementing more rigorous testing, but reminded people why it needs to be independently run.
I mean, it was just at the time it was insane, and I'm glad that UFC did this. I didn't want to bring UFC down. That was not my intent when I did this. I wanted to elevate the sport, and I'm glad they did it. I think it elevated the sport. And now, yeah, they're not with USADA anymore, but I think they hire another organization to do the tests now. But I do believe that if you want to avoid corruption, it needs to be a separated entity that do the test than the organization itself. If the organization has power in order, like in the
Right.
testing, it's corrupted.
Now, in theory, that certainly makes sense, as GSP also noted that if you have a massive fight book and one of the fighters gets flagged for PEDs, would the promotion really call off the fight? What do you think? Now let's take a look at Jailton Almeida calls out Serghei Spivac after UFC win. Serghei Spivac stopped short of calling anyone out following his jaw-dropping submission win at UFC Vegas 95. So Jailton Almeida seized on the opportunity to start driving for a scrap with the polar bear. Spivac took on fellow heavyweight contender Marcin Tybura in the card's headliner, which marked the second time they fought. Back in 2020, Tybura recorded a decision win over the Moldovan fighter. This time around, however, it was a completely different story. After the fight spilled to the mat in round 1, Spivac transitioned into a painful-looking armbar. Hilariously enough, just as broadcasters Michael Bisping and Paul Felder finished saying, "We rarely see heavyweights finish fights with that technique from guard." Following the fight, Spivac was asked who he wants to fight next, and while he didn't mention a name, he did say he wants to face someone ranked above him. That prompted Almeida to post this. "Spivac, do you want someone above you in the rankings? I'm here, number 7 versus number 8. I want to fight, bro. Happy you get to finish early, so we can fight soon." When Spivac was asked to respond to Almeida's call out by the media, the stoic fighter proclaimed, "Let him train." What do you think? Would you like to see Spivac and Almeida throw down? If you need a refresher, Almeida is also coming off a quick submission win, as he tapped Alexander Romanov with a rear naked choke in June. From a rankings perspective, it does make sense, unless for some reason, Spivac moves way up from the number 9 spot once the new rankings go up. Alex Pereira's accuser has broken her silence again and released another video addressing the situation. She is still adamant that she was taken advantage of and even mentions court. Here's what she had to say.
And even though I was not anticipating anything that happened after I posted those videos, it's now become a lot more of a public matter than I was expecting. However, this does not scare me because I am not lying and I have nothing to hide. If he does decide to take it to court, I'm fully prepared to prove beyond reasonable doubt that he did in fact prey on me and he did assault me. Secondly, I'd like to address the fake DM that's being reposted where I allegedly brag about doing this all as promotion for my job. That DM is not real. Believe it or not, I have more self-awareness than that. My Instagram is currently down because of the amount of people reporting it trying to silence me, even though I'm not the bad guy. Every time I've ever mentioned sexual assault to a man, their usual response is to cringe and become visibly uncomfortable. Never once did it cross my mind that me coming forward about being assaulted would result in me gaining subscribers on my page.
DDP receives a warning ahead of his fight with Israel Adesanya at UFC 305. Dan Hooker came out on a recent interview and shared his thoughts on the DDP versus Izzy fight. Here's what he had to say.
And he's came back and he's just looking scary, mate. Like, I don't even want to spar the bloke anymore. He's hitting hard. He's hitting harder than he's ever been hitting. He's got some kind of new strength and power that I've never... Yeah, he's scary. He's looking scary right now. I guess he don't usually have the time to do it, bro. Like, he's fighting as a champion 5 times a year. You know, there's just... he obviously just don't have the time to put that kind of into lifting weights and doing strength and working on those kind of things. So, yeah, just him having that time to go away and to pack on a bit more weight and add a bit more size to his frame has obviously really like positively impacted like his performance.
Top comments. Islam is a real one for trying to make Aspinall and Jones happen. Even Islam calling for Tom versus Jones, lol. UFC is effing stupid. That girl needs to be held accountable for her actions. The bad news is that the Apex isn't getting shut down permanently.